for this to go live. And then adjust off of steel path. And put this solo. Okay, should be coming through okay. Grab my mouse so I can do any adjustments and shit like that. Okay. Should be going good. I want to preface this before I really start. I have watched a ton of Warframe content. Obviously, I have over 700 hours in the game. Mainly what I'm doing this for is friend Wyatt. If he watches this, awesome. And also because I watched a ton of Warframe content, and during all of the videos, I couldn't find a good tutorial. It seems lost on the community to actually explain the game to new players. Because when I was looking at a lot of stuff, all I was really seeing was, ooh, here's like top 10 things I missed when I started the game, or like here's some beginner tips, and nothing like actually like explaining the game, just things saying, ooh, here's things you can do to get ahead, which is dumb. It doesn't explain anything. It doesn't help new players get onboarded or anything. And they've added tutorials and stuff into the game to try and make it beginner friendly, but I wouldn't say it's done enough. So I'm here to do that. Ignore all the ship decal stuff. That's hours of stuff. Also, I'm gonna turn off region chat. In order to make this as simple as possible, I'm going to play a dog water frame. That's a joke. Volt's okay. And also, I am going to play through the entirety of Earth, only using the Mark 1 Bratton. I'm not going to use any melee weapons or anything else. It's just going to be the Mark 1 Bratton, and I'm going to explain some simple stuff. Ignore this real quick. Basically, I'm going to be explaining the basics of every mechanic and some more advanced stuff. But for now, what I'm going to be doing is taking off some stuff that I've had on. So, theoretically, when you just start, your screen should look something like this. Like, you don't have anything at, if I'm correct. Nothing should be equipped on either of your weapons. It should be completely clean. Technically, you shouldn't even have any capacity. You should be starting off with, I think, without MR leveling, which I'll get into later after a few rounds of going through missions. You should only have about 1 capacity on your weapon. And I'll explain affinity as well and how this affects it. So technically, on this screen, ignoring the thing that says Zinuric on the bottom, Volt's rank 16, which means without outside bonuses or like an aura or anything like that, I've only got 16 mod slot. I have 20 because I'm MR 20. It gives it. When you were outfitting your frame, some of the first mods you should think about is anything to do with survivability. Health and shield are really good. There's a mechanic I'll get into towards the more midpoint that more or less explains shield gating and how shield actually, you shouldn't up it in some situations, but others it works. Specifically, we're going to look at a mod called Vitality. It's one of the first ones you're going to get, and it's not a crutch to have survivability. Actually, you should, regardless of your frame. Health is a really good resource. Some frames just don't scale off of it well, and that's fine. Some do extraordinarily well. But again, get into that more when it matters. Frames can be built multiple ways. A lot of the time, any frame is viable. There's some that are like mid or low tier. Off the top of my head, Ureli and Grendel are some of the more low mid tier frames, but that's pretty okay. They're not too bad. They are passable. It just depends on how you build them, and then later there's a system that helps you change frames around and gives them, it pretty much allows you to customize how you want a frame to be, which that'll extremely help, and it can change how you play a frame. But for example, with stats and stuff like that on Volt specifically, we have duration, efficiency, range, and strength. All of these are give or take. Personally, I think due to his electric shield, strength is really good. Like if I throw transient fortitude on here, a pretty high level mod, you increase speed, shock, and discharge, which doesn't really matter depending on how you play. Electric shield is pretty decently, it scales okay. It doesn't scale off of strength, but if you throw on duration, it stays longer, etc. The stats aren't really complicated to explain. Some frames it gets complicated, specifically since we're talking about Mag, Excal, and Volt. It's not very hard to explain. Duration increases how long their abilities stay active. Efficiency decreases energy cost, which early game, without any fancy mods like Equilibrium or some arcanes and even some of the focus school stuff, it is always a good stat to micromanage to make sure you're not consuming too much and causing your builds to kind of fall over, because sometimes you have to rely on your abilities instead of your weapons. Range is self-explanatory, affects how far you can hit. Some characters don't even use range, and in that case, you can pretty much tank the stat. There's some mods like Overextended, which increases it at the cost of strength. Narrow-minded, which increases your duration at the cost of strength, or range, sorry. And transient fortitude, which is strength for duration. Strength is relatively good on every frame. It depends on, again, on who you're playing. Some frames, I know specifically like Zephyr, don't really matter with strength. Mag is a more of a range character, to the point where I think some builds do require her to pretty much drop, use Overextended to give her abilities that range she needs. That being said, into more of the tutorial part of this rather than me explaining things. So, this does catch some people up. It does kind of confuse people, and you might not understand it at first glance, but that's okay. So when you start in your ship, you're going to start standing here. Navigation, it's really easy. You press X onto it, you'll sit down, and you'll look at it. This is a very late game view of it. You're not, if you were to look at it, you probably wouldn't see the Zariman, Kuva, Fortress, and Lua. You would see Earth, Mars, Deimos, all that, except those three. The only one you should have access to at the beginning of the game is Earth, so if you go into it, you'll see all of your kind of missions and stuff like that. For explanation's sake, and because I'm going to clear every node on here, barring one or two. E Prime is your starting mission. There's currently a lift fissure on here. I'll explain that more later. But Exterminate is exactly what it sounds like. There isn't a there's not a alternate objective. So when we start, obviously you know how to move, you know how to aim. I'm not sure if crouch is a different button. Mine is bound to clicking in the right stick, and aim is, for you, is going to be left trigger. I play at an advanced level, I'd say, so I've switched aiming to left bumper and melee to left trigger. B would normally be your melee button. Left bumper, I don't even actually remember what that is. I think it's alternate fire. For the sake of being fair and not too complex, left trigger's aiming, right trigger shooting, obviously. And continue a little further here. So you can run around, click and hold the stick to slide. If you just want to roll, you can just click the stick. For a little bit of an advanced thing, you can click the stick or hold the stick to slide, and then you can jump off of that, and it allows you to also double jump, which is just obviously pressing the A button twice. That deals insane amounts of damage, even though I'm not doing anything. So, pretty much, you'll see that, like, obviously HP bar, they're kind, and then, there's that little 1. Technically, there's a level system in the game, which, before I got, like, pretty good at the game, it frustrated me to no end, because I couldn't figure out how to make my frames go above level 30. Ooh, actually, that's indeed rare. That's not a thing. Frames and weapons go up to level 30, and when I kill this guy, that number that popped up with the plus 60 is affinity. Depending on how you kill things, for example, if I shoot him, 60 is the number of XP I'm getting for that. So for the MK1 Bratton, it gets, if I'm correct, it's a 75 split between your weapon and frame on a weapon kill. However, it doesn't spread to the rest. So if I was running, let's say, like a melee weapon and a secondary, I wouldn't be getting affinity for my primary, secondary, and melee. I would only be getting it for my primary. 25% of that also goes to your Warframe, which does mean as you get further in the game, you do end up having you are able to use a weapon to basically carry you through any kind of mission you need, and allows you to pretty much passively level up a frame, especially when I get into a further detail about it. Every frame is unique. At least unique enough. Some of them are obviously undisputably better than others. But Volt's one of the ones that everybody's like, yeah, it's a pretty mid-line character. You can use him for a lot of content, and you can use him for, a ton of versatile content. For example, so with basic combat down, aiming, shooting, and then also, don't be afraid to hip fire in this game. The reason I have my aim button on left bumper is because aiming doesn't actually matter except for a very specific few weapons. So you can pretty confidently, that dot in the center of your screen is where your shot's going to land. So you don't really have to worry about anything else with it or overcomplicate it too much. If you aim, yeah, you're going to hit where you aim. If you don't, you're going to hit where you don't. Like, you can see the dot, it is very trustworthy. So, with that down, obviously I don't have any melee weapons, so I can't really show stealth kills, which is pretty explanatory. If you're not detected or you're stealthing around, you can press the interact key behind a character or any kind of enemy, and it will perform a finisher. It deals a ton of damage, and pretty much early level games, you're going to kill everything in one shot. It's extremely strong, and it allows you to do a lot. So with that said, that's basic combat, and then frames all have unique abilities. Excal's one, I think, is Exalted Dash or something like that. I forget, it's been a ton. I'm still trying to get Excal off the top of my list. But for Volt, it's Shot. Pretty simple. A lot of the beginning frames you're going to deal with aren't very confusing. A lot of them are just shock. Xcal has the dash. Mag, kind of complicated as well. But I'm not too familiar with her. I am not a big mag player. So that basically is your bread and butter for the beginning rounds. Click and left stick to run, hold right stick to slide, tap it to roll, and of course slide and then jump and then jump. There is another feature with jumping where if you aim down, you will aim glide. It's very useful for traversing the map, where you can just jump and then do this, and then you can also slide in midair to give yourself a little momentum boost. You can't do this and then, well, okay, I lied. Sliding in midair is pretty strong. It lets you land. You probably used both of your jumps anyway earlier, so there's not really anything to be scared of there. And that's roughly a lot of your movement. Obviously, there's some other stuff about movement too. For example, if you get to a wall or an area that's kind of flat, I don't think Earth has a really good example here. Well, I guess I could do it off of this. If you are perpendicular to a wall or any such surface, kind of like this, you will wall run. And honestly, once you get the movement basics down, this is just a way to reset your jump cooldown. And allow you to traverse a bunch of the maps easier. A lot of maps don't really need it. It's just kind of there as a good assist, especially if once you get good at the movement system, you can pretty much get against the wall or anything while like bullet jumping and then jump off of it to reset your jump cooldown, allow you to jump again and make that distance even further yet. You can also jump up walls, obviously, just by kind of doing the same thing, where you jump and then instead of just going to the side, you just hit up instead, which allows you to do that. And yeah, so that's kind of your movement right now. There isn't really much, so slide jumping, stuff like that. Bread and butter for movement is slide, jump, and then jump again. That'll get you through a lot of the early game content. Later in difficulty, which I'm not going to really get into depth with right now, that will pretty much make or break your runs. Movement's a very big part in Warframe, as it's a movement shooter. So it's always very good to know your surroundings. Obviously, every level is lightly randomly generated. There is presets, but your best bet is figure out what movement style works for you. If you just want to run around, kind of sliding and jumping and stuff like that, that's fair enough. You don't have to force yourself to do any fancy tech where you like launch yourself and then jump off of this and then aim glide and then up and then slide jump and yeah, whatever. You don't have to force yourself to do that. One of the main things about late game Warframe is to stay moving. So a lot of the time you're not going to be doing anything super fancy. Instead, you're just going to be kind of slide jumping and then shooting somebody. You know, it's not anything too big. Continuing now, let's clear the rest of the mission. While I explain some frame stuff. Every frame has 4 abilities, and then obviously, in here, you can always see your frame's passive ability. For example, Volts is granted movement, generates a electric charge up to 5 damage per meter unleashed in the next attack. It's not very strong. It is very reminiscent of an old kind of feel of the game. And then obviously there are tips. These are more or less just kind of general things like electrical shield increases the critical damage of weapons fired through it, which is very good. Catch and shoot through multiple electrical shields to stack the damage, and then like electrical shields to deploy. And it's not a lot of frames will have them. I think every frame at least explains lightly what their abilities can be used for. I know some of them are too vague. A Gauss is one of the better examples of a frame that is improperly explained, and I don't like how he was explained because I had to actually look it up myself. I had to go through some frame building sites and figure him out through that, which isn't fun, but now that I have him and I've got it all down, that helps. Hi, Wyatt. Hello? You have joined the wrong party. I'm doing that thing I was talking about. The Warframe thing. I literally sent the group in the...
Well done. Now get to extraction.
Oh, come on! You literally responded to it. Goodbye! Dickhead. Anyway, every frame has 4 abilities, and later in the game, in a very interesting way, you can change it and make it more not completely customizable frames, although that is rumored currently, but I'm not trusting that, going with what I know. Volt has 4, which requires speed's a very good one. You just kind of run. It's not a big boost, but it is noticeable. Electrical shield is very big. It just generates damage and allows you to stack critical. Obviously, I'm using the MK1 Bratton. You will not notice this. And then discharge, which I think a lot of people subsume for things like Eclipse and stuff. Basically, giant electrical pulse. So anyway, now that this mission is done, we can roll out. So through this, you might have picked up a few mods. Beginning of the game, a lot of them are going to be classified as flawed mods, which isn't very usable. Also, as my Bratton just leveled up again, I can kind of explain this as well. Every time you finish a mission, you'll see your affinity, and then you'll get a bonus affinity as well. I don't exactly know what that is, it's just kind of there. This left number is how much you made in the mission. This right number is the bonus, which stacks on. Technically, you get double affinity, so if you level up a weapon 5 times, there's a chance that'll be like rank 7 to 10, just depending on the level curve, obviously. You'll be able to see everything you got in here, like, for example, I got the sculpture and all of this. Resources are very important, as I'll talk about later. But for now, with some mods, we can just go and look. Obviously, I have a ton. So, for example, one of the mods that you're probably going to see a lot of in builds is Intensify. Throw it on, this number goes up. Also, my capacity is 9 of 20 if I have it in this slot, but if I put it in this green slot, which is the same polarity as it, it cuts the cost in half. Some weapons and some frames require a ton of polarization or formas to get them working properly. A few weapons include the Kuva Brahma, which is one of the strongest weapons in the game, Amprex and Fulman, which are decent mid-tier weapons. They require a ton of investment to really make it right. However, with strength, we can see that the standard damage is 125. With Intensify making it 130, it becomes 162.5. This means it went up. The speed bonus on speed has gone up as well, and electrical shield, I guess, doesn't scale that much. Probably got nerfed at some point. And then obviously discharge, all of these things are the same, but my damage per second has gone up. Overall, investing into a frame is your best thing. So for now that I have Intensify on here, I'm going to throw another mod on, something kind of more low tier like here. Streamline. Let's just throw that on there. Streamline increases ability efficiency. Our shock, which was at 25, is now at 21.25, meaning it costs less, which means we can cast it more. And this also does affect other factors as well. For abilities that you have to channel and therefore consistently have cost, for example, I'm going to switch to another frame real quick. Here's a good one. I guess Mesa will work. Our abilities here, this is a really late game build. This ability takes energy per second. So, instead of costing 25 and then every second it takes 15 on my build, it costs the initial cost of 10 and then 3.93 per second. This is because even without ability efficiency, duration makes it cost less, therefore is being able to stay up longer, hence duration. So that lets it sit comfortably and keep basically going. Switch off of this again. The MK1 Bratton is a very weak weapon. The standard Bratton works too, and then obviously there is a prime variant, which is a very good starter weapon, I'd say. A mod that you might get very early on, actually you will get very early on, is Serration. So 165 is not exactly... Numbers in this game are kind of weird, and they work very differently from how other games will do. It won't actually be 165%. So if I throw 15, I go from 18 to 20.7. And now I'm going to talk about more technical damage stuff. Serration is a pretty good mod. You throw one on, late game you start using it less and less as you can change over to another thing. For now, we're going to look at this tab over here. So our accuracy is 40. This is kind of a weird stat because technically it doesn't matter, technically it does. It's more of hip firing. The game is pretty serious about you being able to aim in and doing it that way. Fire rate is obvious. Increases. If I throw on speed trigger here, I'll go from 7.50 to 8.25. Some weapons don't matter. Some weapons, it does matter. It's very dependent on what you have. Obviously, furthermore, you can look into it or even ask anybody. Magazine, how much you hold. For example, I have somewhere here ammo drum, which isn't a mod you're going to be using a lot, but oh wait, that's maximum, not what I thought it was. Do I have any of those? Oh, magazine warp, which will increase it from 60 to 63. Not a very big jump, but this is unleveled, keep in mind. You won't be using this mod a lot. You'll be mainly using other things that increase reload speed while increasing other things and stuff like that. Noise level, very easy. The MK1 Bratton is a loud gun. It's an assault rifle. But things like the MK1 Paris are a bow weapon, so therefore they are quiet. You can also use mods like Hush, which reduces the chance of the gunfire being heard. Every level on this mod makes it so that it's 25, 50, 75, and then it makes it fully silent. Which means you can technically take a really strong weapon and make it completely silent. Reload speed, time in seconds. If you take this and put fast hands on, you get 1.9. Some weapons, this can make or break it. There are weapons in the game that take multiple seconds to reload during that period. So, you can die. Yeah. The longer the reload time, the longer it's going to take. So if it matters that much to you, you can throw fast hands on there. There's also some other mods that do make it quicker. Critical chance is obvious. if you hit, there is an on the MK1 brand. There's an 8% chance for it to be critical. There are 3 tiers of critical. There used to be 4. It's kind of condensed now. Critical 1 is yellow. Normal damage numbers are in white. You'll always see them unless you're running very specific builds and stuff like that. So 1 is white. 100-ish is yellow. 150, I think, starts orange, and then over 200% critical chance starts red. It's very rare to get red crits unless you're running very specific mods and builds that really facilitate that. Critical multiplier is obvious. Take your Take your, so for example, this is 1.5, which means this is going to be like this will be 30 instead. If you hit if you hit an orange crit, this value, which would be 10, will be doubled. So it'll be 40 damage. Or if it's a red crit, that 10 damage will be 30 damage, which means it does 50. Status is kind of weird because there's a ton of there's stuff to increase it. For example, Magnet Force gives it a new damage type and gives it status. So you're adding another damage type onto it. And then specifically, in order to explain damage types, let me clear this so that's not all the green letters. Damage types are interesting. So this total is everything. So we have 50% slash because it's 10.4, and then we have 25% puncture, 25% impact. If I were to look and say, oh, well, I want cryo rounds on here, and I threw that on, suddenly this entire thing is different. This becomes over or at least half of my damage entirely. So instead of being, oh, I have a chance to proc impact, puncture, and slash, I now have a higher chance to proc cold because there is more cold on the weapon. So these two, at this rate, pretty much become a 1/3, while slash and cold take prominence. A lot of builds, this can be very good. For example, one of the strongest elements in the game right now is viral, which increases a flat kind of damage to your target. Yeah, like viral increases damage against health up to 325. It is a very strong element, and it is currently one of the most meta things in the game right now. For better or for worse. That's really up to your interpretation. Obviously, some things do still work, but viral is still very, very meta. So that is the basic of modding frames and stuff. A lot of it is just seeing what works for you. Obviously, communication is a very big thing. There's nearly 10 years of content to sift through, so it gets kind of hard to see newer things, because a lot of things that were in the old patches have been patched out. Obviously, balancing has changed. And then we kind of get into more or less, Melees has a lot of different things because it is a very complicated subject. But for now, I mean, yeah, that's pretty honestly the simplest explanation. And then specifically, you'll have 2 resources for leveling up mods. So, for example, this Vitality, if I take this and I select one, I can fuse into it. This increases the power, so for now it's at 40, and then it's 80, but the cost goes up. So, for example, at base it's 2. However, at max, this is 12. But instead of 40%, you're getting 440%. That does make a big difference. However, on this side, on the right side, instead of where it's showing health and drain, you see endo, which is a resource that infrequently drops. There's ways to farm it easily, but it is always, always, always a very big part of figuring out how to get a build done. And also seeing if you can't just get the weapon up across the threshold that might get it into better content. And then credits, which you won't really run out of unless you're just willy-nilly spending it. I have a few times because I built a ton of stuff, didn't really realize I was running out, and then ran out. There's ways to farm it. There's also just kind of playing the game will passively generate it as well. Mods seem complicated in theory. They're easy to understand in practice. A lot of it is just deciding what a build is. For example, we have Streamline and Intensify on Volt, which is increasing my efficiency and strength. When you know what you're comfortable with, a lot of this becomes easier to see. You won't have anything like these Umbral Intensifies or Rolling Guard or Adaptation, but you would have easy to understand things like Vitality, Streamline, and then maybe an Aura mod depending on how far you go. I'm just going to throw that on so we have more shield, and then into the next level.
There is a large platoon of Grenier Marines stationed here. Leave no one standing.
So for this, I'm going to only use this melee weapon. Obviously, it's a little stronger than the one you're going to get when you start, but melee is pretty strong. As long as you're very careful about how much damage you're taking, it is a very strong system, and that allows you to pretty easily or safely take out enemies. Late game is a very big part of the game because there's some mods that make it interesting. Also, because I'm using a melee weapon, I can perform a stealth kill. It deals 14,000 damage, which is 12 times my standard, I think. I'd like to say. Yeah, it's a lot. It's at least 10 times. Some stealth frames are really good at it, like Loki and Ash, which allows them to pretty safely dispatch enemies relatively quickly. There's also some others like Equinox and Evara who require more focused builds, and it isn't intrinsically their kit. So, I guess getting damage is going to be really hard. As per most relatively simple MMO games or stuff like that, I guess Destiny would be a good example. Destiny has a ton of regenerating health. Warframe has shields and health. Shields automatically come back. As you've been seeing, anytime I've taken damage, the blue number, shields, has come back, while red hasn't. I haven't taken health damage yet, so that's kind of making it where it's very hard to showcase, firstly, I guess. Health doesn't. Some frames are really good at bringing it back. There's also some late game items called arcanes that do, which more or less it's very late game. Like, I don't even have most of it, and I'm pretty far in. There are support frames, if that's kind of what you're leaning towards, though I will say more of the AoE stuff is fun, or a unique frame. Mace is one of the more unique characters in the game, and is very, very, very fun. So, I want to see if I can't get a proc here. This is going to be very hard to show with an MK1 Bratton. So when you get a status proc, that status is added onto them. Good way to think about it is, like, oh God, how do I even explain that? When you deal damage, depending on your damage types, it can be any of the ones listed. For example, we have puncture, impact, slash, and viral. If I were to shoot and I proc a status, the highest chance I get is viral. Behind that is slash, and then it goes down to puncture and impact. There's over a 50% chance that I get the impact or slash proc, with the other ones falling slow but close behind.
On this cold and lonely eve, spare a thought.
So, throw on something else here. I guess I can't really. Gonna run a fun weapon a little bit. So, in late game, when you start to get into it, there's a few interesting things you can do. That being said, in late game, there is a mechanic that you have to keep an eye out on, which is multi-shot. It does exactly what it says. It multis your shot. And literally, it makes it so that the weapon you're shooting shoots twice, depending on how you have it. Galvanized Chamber is a really late game mod where on kill, it gives additional multi-shot, which means technically with using this mod you can get 3 multi-shot, which is a single shot being shot 3 times. A lot of weapons do depend on this. One of the latest game weapons is the Kuva Brahma, which is a explosive bow. Basically you shoot 3 arrows and it detonates into more bombs. But we're gonna throw on some mods here. And then we're also going to throw on a little fun increased fire rate, and we get some punch through here, meaning, yeah, it punches through an enemy, and then maybe a little bit. And then we'll run with this. So, I haven't mentioned the story. That's a very big reason why. It doesn't matter when the game starts. The story is kind of in the background. You'll be told it's there, but it hasn't really started to matter yet. And there's no real point in really paying attention to it because it doesn't really matter to you right now. The story doesn't really start to matter until pretty deep in, I'd say, and at that rate, you're probably going to pay attention to it only somewhat. It doesn't really matter. Gonna keep clearing through these levels. A lot of the game, I'm going to be honest, is just kind of like experiencing it. Destiny was fun to me in a very strange way when I played it. I didn't play Destiny for the story, although I did appreciate how they did it. Destiny itself is a looter shooter. You play the game to see your numbers go up and get fancy guns and shit like that. This is kind of like that. There is more in the way of that, obviously, which is like Destiny's exotic system. You could say that it's not level locked, but a lot of it, especially getting your exotics leveled up, is very gated behind stuff. Let's clear this mission. So capture is very easy. You just run at the target, kill them, and then end the mission. So in in this one, we got Ammo Drum, Vitality, Disruptor, and Pressure Point. Ammo Drum, Disruptor won't matter. Pressure Point, pretty important. Increases your melee damage pretty significantly. Melee doesn't have the same gear things that weapons do. And this is where it's going to get a little bit complicated because it's not something you're going to engage with right now, but it will matter in the future. So, on Volt, I've been ignoring it, but auras are a very big part, which basically these are passive buffs that also increase your mod capacity. So, we right now have the, I think that's Zenuric, or the Moderai polarity here, which is this little V. The names don't matter, just know what they are. In this case, we can use Growing Power, Deadeye, Power Donation, Steel Charge, stuff like this. Deadeye increases sniper rifle damage by a significant margin. We can just slap that on there, and now instead of having 20, we now have 34, which lets us just kind of throw in whatever we want, like just go Prime Flow, which increases our energy cost, or our energy in general, so we can have more in reserve for when we need it, and Handspring, because it's funny. And then on this right side is a mid-late game thing, depending on how you talk about it. On frames, this can make or break a build. There's a lot here, and a lot of it I'm not going to talk about. One of the key things you should know is that this system does exist. A lot of these can be used beneficially to really make your build feel like your own build. Arcane Energize is one of the best ones in the game right now. 60% chance to replenish 50 energy to anybody within 15 meters. Basically, it lets you feed into your own energy and allows you to use your abilities more and really steps it up. That's the only one I'm really going to talk about, because the rest of them are, some of them are just filler, some of them do work. For weapons, arcanes are a little bit more complicated. We're going to go with the Nadaruk here, just because I know how this is. So, on this one, I've obviously done a ton here to make this weapon as strong as it is there. In the arcanes, these are more limited, but they are very much... They can change how you play a weapon, if that makes sense. For example, Primary Deadhead makes it on anytime you get a headshot kill, you get 120% damage for 24 seconds, stacking up 3 times. You also get a 30% headshot multiplier, while also getting a 50% weapon recoil reduction. This means that every stack you get, it's not... There's a... Serration. Okay, I'm just going to equip this real quick, which just to make this known. Primary Deadhead works very well, because the thing is this 120% damage isn't 127 or 120% flat. It is 120% of your damage. So my damage right now on the Nadaruk is 450 on a uncharged shot. If I throw a Serration on here, you'll see it go up to 1.1k. Not bad, but it's still kind of bad. This is due to the fact that this isn't doubling my damage. You can see that. It's actively not. Or, it's not multiplying it by 2.5. It is an additive bonus. So, 450 plus 165 AI, I can do calculator stuff real quick. So on the calculator here, we have 450 base. And then if we add 165%, we're adding 742.5 damage, which is what's getting us the 1.192.5. This is because it's additive. a lot of late game builds require you to completely drop this mod, or if you're going to use this mod, you're going to be using it as a way to further your damage output for when you use arcanes. So if I take this off, it goes back to 400. Primary Deadhead, you'd think 120% damage stacking up to 3 times. That's only, well, I mean, like, that's not bad. I mean, 450 plus 120%, and then adding that together is 990, and then you add 540, and then 540, and you get 2070. However, it doesn't work like that. Instead, Primary Deadhead, and therefore Primary Merciless, which is the a more accommodating one, is 450 times 120%. And then pretty much it scales very, very quickly. Allowing, hi Flare, allowing you to climb to pretty ridiculous heights on it, like pretty much multiplying your damage. Arcanes are one of the things that breaks you into higher content and allows you to more or less balance out how you fundamentally understand weapons. I have a ton of this farmed because it does take a while, but it is very worth it, as the second you start to, even if you get a rank 1 arcane for it, it is still a massive power boost. It will jump how far your weapons can carry you and how good you can balance any level of content. So that explains roughly what arcanes do. We're gonna equip the, where's the MK1 Bratton? This is more used than most of my actual weapons. So that's what arcanes do, and it's not extremely, they're not extremely strong, but they are, well, they are extremely strong, but they're very late game. I completed the star chart without them because they aren't needed until you're doing like various high level bosses and stuff like that. The next thing I want to talk about is, instead of modding arcanes or anything about that, right here giving a math lesson, it's a hard to understand concept. Some people still don't understand it in the community apparently, and it kind of hurts. How do you get all of these items? For example, I have a ton of frames. I have a ton of them, and I main a new one every week. So most things you can buy out of the store, which allows you to get their blueprint, and then you're allowed to resource farm them, or maybe you have to join a clan. I have one because I'm cool. With pretty much everything researched, you can relatively easily decide, oh hey, I want to build this. One of the more appreciated weapons in the community is the Ignis Wraith, which is a very easy to obtain weapon that can carry you through a ton of content. It is a flamethrower with insanely high amount of damage potential, and combining with what I just said about the arcanes, slotting them in to give the multiplicative damage bonus plus whatever else you need, you can relatively and most times safely use that weapon to carry you through a level. But with building stuff, I have around 50 things in built, so ignore what I'm about to pull up because it's a ton. But if you come over here, one of the things you're given an option to do, or must do, is build the foundry or slot it in and get it all set up. This is a workhorse for you. Ignore all of this. This allows you to build Warframes, primaries, secondaries, melees, arc wings, which I'll explain a little bit, but not much. Your companions, which are extremely important, especially for late game players. I know myself, I use a specific cat breed, and then I also use Carrier Prime. There's some landing craft here, which this doesn't really matter. You're never going to really pay attention to this. Appearance, I mean, hey, if you like fashion and stuff like that, go ahead. Other gear items. One of the ones you're probably going to get a ton of early game is the Vapor Specters, which allows you to, I shit you not, spawn another person. It lets you copy your loadout. So if I was to build this right now, it would pop up that I would be taking this Volt, MK1 Brand, and Bow Prime, and I would be replacing my Wisp, Tigress, Bronco, Graham. This is the one that I use infrequently. It's decently good, and it does help. They basically just add another body for you, but most times, if you're going to use it, you're probably better off having players with you anyway, which is how I would recommend to do a lot of the content, is having another player there, or maybe even a full squad, depending on what you're doing. So, that allows you to build this. This is some far deep into the game stuff. Personally, I wouldn't worry about it until you're at least, like, MR10. Like, I didn't start messing around with most of this stuff until I was MR15. But then again, I blazed through 15 to 20 within the past 2 months. Modular is super late game stuff. I wouldn't even worry about it until you know what a operator is, and I'm not going to explain that here because that's a can of worms that doesn't really matter for beginning game. Fishing, if you play Warframe for fishing. There's mining, which is for more of the modular stuff. Sometimes it checks for some stuff to level up syndicates. And then obviously miscellaneous, which is just your kind of random stuff. For example, I have the ambassador pieces here, which is a weapon that you obtain through farming survivals in a specific ranger, specific tile set and stuff like that. I can claim this. This is where you'll find your forma, which is a very important mechanic. And then, of course, Void Rig stuff for your Void Rig, which I don't know if they're giving out to new players or not. If you have it, awesome, because this got toned down. It used to be a lot worse. Yeah, farming this used to be an actual fucking headache. And I'm glad that they've kind of toned that down. A lot of the early game farming or getting into a bunch of our content nowadays, all of that farming has been pretty much nipped and is a lot better now. When I started the game, it's been about like 5 years, I'd say. When I started the game, one of the key things to move on in the game was locked behind a 3-day wait period. Because you would have to wait 12 hours to build one piece, find the other one, build that one for 12 hours, find the other one, and then build that for 12 hours, and then had to build the item itself for 12 hours. So, if you're a normal human being, you would do that, have to hop off, go to bed, wake up tomorrow, remember to do it, because if you missed it, then you wouldn't be able to. So, it is very good that they changed that. Other than that, we can keep going through the missions real quick, so I can explain mission types. So we've done exterminates, we've done capture. Defense is really simple. I'm going to do 5 rounds to pretty much bring this up. Defense is an endless type. Endless missions are the best mission type.
You must defend equipment until reinforcements arrive.
Because I said so. Defense is self-explanatory. You have one set objective, which is this thing, and you just kind of sit here and go shoot shit. There's a ton of CC and AoE frames, which will help you. One of the most notable early game ones is Frost, which can summon a giant bubble, which does bubble shit, you know? Obviously, this is really early game, so it's not really that I have to sweat it. Also, for beginning game, if you're not really sure how to kill shit, for melee, there's a ton of shit you can do. Standard melee stuff. Press button, you swing. Press button, you continue to swing. Some weapons have some combo sets. This is the bow prime standard. Here's the walking, which is really basic. However, if you feel like it, there is a combo meter. As you hit shit and do damage, which allows you to stack some stuff up. Eventually, after 20 hits, you get a combo going. It goes up to 220, when which you get a 12 times multiplier, and then if you press your heavy attack button or your alternate fire, in my case is going to be B, you do a heavy attack, which deals more damage than a regular attack. Also, if you aim with your melee weapon, you block shots. So keep that in mind. Kind of letting this get damaged here, trying to explain shit. Melee is very strong, but it doesn't get strong until late game. You can do some fun stuff with it. There is a method called priming, which you use a secondary or a very high status chance primary to inflict a ton of statuses at once. And then you use a pretty rare mod called condition overload, which allows you to hit a target for a, I think it's multiplicative, it might be additive bonus that will stack for everything that they have on it. For example, if I can proc one here. So he has slash. If I had condition overload on this, I would be dealing, I would be dealing a ton more damage just because of that one. A lot of late game builds for it require either a really, really strong primary weapon or a really good primer weapon so that you can get down and dirty with the melee weapon, basically cleaning house with it. Where did he go? I lost him? What? So yeah, this is pretty much defense. I might start skimming some stuff here because a lot of this does become really repetitive, but this is pretty much a... It's an hour long, but I'm going to call it concise anyway. Again, the main reason I'm doing this is I don't see a lot of people trying to onboard with Warframe anymore, and that's decently annoying because the game's really good, but if you can't play it because it doesn't make sense to you, I don't think that's really fair, especially with people being like, well, it's a good game. It's like, yeah, but it's a good game to, like, I have 700 hours into it. It's a good game because I've put that time into it. It shouldn't have to be that fun. It shouldn't have to be that long before you really understand these basic game mechanics. Discharge. Once you get a few of the basics down, this game becomes a lot simpler. The main thing is you shouldn't worry about feeling like you don't know what you're doing, because there isn't really anything to really feel like you're doing. Because the game is about basically getting stronger and getting over a curve into more difficult content. And it does take time. It does take a ton of time. Again, it's taken me a ton to even get to the point where I am now, where I'm comfortable with using a low tier frame in the highest tier of content, which I do routinely because I find it insanely fun and I find it rewarding to see how a weapon can be used and perfected. I use a lower tier weapon called the Jack Sar, which is it's a whip weapon, like a fire whip weapon, and I use that religiously. It's one of like my staple weapons, other than like the Gram right now, because I did an hour survival mission with somebody only using that and a priming weapon as my secondary. So after 5 waves on the defense, 5 minutes on the survival, or I think 1 or 2 extra excavators complete, you can choose to extract, which is self-explanatory. You can leave the mission, cash in, and take all your rewards. So, for now, that's mostly it. Further things would be the codex. In this, you can see your quest log. If you just started out, you won't see a lot of this. A lot of this will be blurred out. You will have the... Oh god, where is it? The Vorse prize quest, or the Awakening, which will be complete. For granted, you have to put your time into it, but you will be rewarded. I would say yes. Once you get over the initial curve, and once you start to get into a main, or maybe even a few weapons that you feel like are rewarding enough, it is pretty rewarding, especially once you start blasting through most of the content. Once you... I feel like a lot of it is... I've been playing the game solo for pretty much 5 years, and that's not... It's fun, but if you can get friends together or anything like that, that pretty much... That expands how much you can do, that expands what you can know with your team. You can coordinate stuff better, you can even do some of the big content pretty easily at that. There is, I think it's a duo or a group of people that will run one of the hardest bosses in the game and complete it in under a minute, which is fucking awesome. Like, they know what they're doing, they have a very specific and intrinsic process they use, and they blast through it. And I mean, gosh, if I could, I would. But when you start out, you won't see a lot of this. Obviously, this is pretty late stuff. Some of these I haven't done because it's just too much for me, because it just annoys me. But the first quest you're gonna get is Vorse Prize. Pretty self-explanatory. It pretty much just walks you through most of it. It's supposed to onboard you, but it does a really shitty job of it. Basically, this is like your first true test before, I mean, anything actually happens. You pretty much play through all of Earth, you do some of the fancy stuff, and then you interact with Venus Junction, which... Wait, Vorse Prize isn't? What? Wait, what? Okay, no, never mind. Been so long. You basically complete the nodes here, you follow your quest log, which you can easily access from this little menu up here. You just hit right bumper, and you'll be able to see what all you've got. It'll guide you to the next one, and it'll constantly remind you that, hey, you have pending quests, and it gets kind of annoying, but it's fine, because I'm the one choosing not to do it. But you can basically keep walking along the path, it'll let you choose and everything. And then these junctions have decent enough requirements to get there. For example, complete Vorse Prize, collect 20 mods, apply 4 mods to a single Warframe or weapon, and upgrade any mod. I've explained pretty much how this works, and I would hope, if you've been listening, it makes sense. These unlock intrinsic rewards as well. You get the Furus, which is a pretty okay side pistol. I wouldn't say it's one of the best, obviously not. I have one of the best. And then the Taxon companion, which I will get into now because I completely forgot you unlock that. Taxon is fine as your first. You shouldn't be pressured into getting any others. I've seen MR16 players with this fucking thing still above them, and I am genuinely shocked. Companions are interesting. You can get cat, infested doggy, or a little robot companion that provides buffs and ways to more or less give you a additional hand. Carrier is one of my favorite personally, and it's one of the first I would recommend anybody really decide to pick up. Carrier's and unique thing is that he breaks boxes for you and then sucks everything. Well, most all companions can gather stuff, but he also converts your ammo for you and also increases your ammo capacity. It is really strong, especially for weapons that take a lot of ammo. I use the Kuva Brahma a lot, and I use the Asaltra and a bunch of weapons that consume ammo at unbelievably and ungodly rates. So Carrier is one of my go-tos. Other than that, I use things to convert ammo intrinsically on the weapon so that it goes back into it, and it kind of feeds a circle. Sometimes you can run out of ammo, and then that really does hold you up. That's personally why I like Carrier itself. They also get a weapon. They're not good. Personally, I wouldn't see any purpose in using it. You can obviously, as you see, it has its own damage table as well. Technically, you could throw status on this thing to make it so that it applies additional things that you can't cover. It is very unreliable, though. I would not recommend it. Instead, once you're able to get into, not Fortuna, make this easier to see. Once you're able to get into Cetus, you should farm the Vigilante stuff, or ask somebody to give it to you. I have a ton of them, to be fair, but I do need to get more of them, just in case. These enhance critical hits from primary weapons, which is pretty good because I think that just straight up increases the tier they are. So if you have a yellow, there's a 20% chance it becomes an orange. If it's an orange, there's a 20% chance it becomes a red. It's very strong. They are very strong, and think about it this way, you don't have to take up mod slots to use this. You can just have it be on there. So that's that. Arcwing and stuff like this is not a big deal. It gets explained very quickly, and that's all you really need to know. You get an Arcwing, you get a weapon with it that's a big gun, and then you just kind of ignore it because the content that this is for is very late game and easily explained itself. You just kind of fly around. It's boring content, honestly. Other than that, did I miss anything? Operator doesn't really matter. That's a very, very big topic for another time that I'm not entirely experienced on. Parazon doesn't really matter for early game. Frames, arcanes, stuff like that. I guess another big thing is the store. Don't be afraid to look into it. It's not that bad. It'll constantly pop up with stuff, and ooh, look at shiny new shiny stuff. Literally just go into weapons, and then hit hide items without blueprints. And it'll, if I'm correct, it sorts by MR, so you can, or it'll only show you what you can buy, which allows you to go in, purchase it, and then you can see. Some weapons do require other weapons, so never get rid of a weapon unless you know. Or if you do get rid of it, it's not that big of a deal because you can just kind of get them back. It does take the materials again, but hey, sometimes that's just how it be when it is. That's not very complicated. It's just kind of there. You don't have to use it other than like getting weapons that you think you'd enjoy. Other than that, over here, the syndicate thing is a very complicated thing that, oh look, I joined stuff that hate each other. Basically Fallout New Vegas. I ran Loka, Vale, and Perrin because they paired very well, and I liked their mods. However, any of these work. You're only really here for the mods they give anyway for frames, which are augments, which I will briefly explain by using one of my new favorite frames as an example. So I'm going to re-equip all my standard gear here. Where is she? Things I was farming. And standard weaponry. So, for example, my Trinity Prime is a very, 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 very high tier thing. Not because she is high tier, but because I made her high tier. Augments change intrinsic, like, basically how a thing works, or adds on to it. For example, Pool of Life is a very good mod. It takes a Well of Life target, which is self-explanatory. You lift an enemy. It creates a radius where you get health per second. Damaging it gives lifesteal. Pool of Life makes it so that any person that you lift it up will drop 4 health orbs, and it has a high chance of dropping an energy orb, or a 25% chance of dropping an energy orb. Basically, it can feed into itself if you use some Arcane Energize, and it also makes it where even if they go down and you still need health, it will drop health orbs. Abating Link makes it so that this mod, which latches onto 3 targets nearby, reduces their armor. So therefore, you can focus on them and pretty much clear rooms of enemies extremely fast. Tammy's Blessing is a mid-tier mod, going past that. Vampire Leech makes it just better. Some augments fundamentally change how things work, some don't. Again, once you find your frame main, then you can really look into it. Other than that, they're not very complicated. Other than that, there isn't really much. One of the big things you can't get caught up on a Warframe is thinking that everything is too big. If you think everything is too big, you're not going to have a good time, and you're going to ruin it for yourself. And personally, when I started this game, it's a fucking joke. When I started this game, a lot of this wasn't in here, and it was really hard. I'm gonna be real. It was very difficult to start this game. I sat on Koba and only did Koba missions for... It had to have been 6 months. I never left this tile. I only did this mission type. It was awful. It was actually bad. But now that I have gotten pretty far into the game, I'd say safely, if you have a mission type you really like and you can consistently play and get good at, that's very good, as it's a step towards getting pretty much anywhere in the game and ensuring that you can, at minimum, just like enjoy yourself. A ton of the game is definitely pretty difficult, and it is also kind of tedious at times. But in the end, if you get some buddies together or anything like that, you can easily have fun. Definitely don't build around other people's playstyles. Don't focus too much on a specific game mode. Don't think, oh, well, I'm bad at this game because I don't understand what's going on. In the beginning of the game, you won't understand what's going on. It doesn't make a lot of sense that way, but this is one of those MMO games that didn't have a story when it launched and was just launched for people to kind of have fun in. Which sounds awful, but a lot of games are like that now. Overwatch, Siege, Apex, you just kind of play it to have fun, and that's kind of what Warframe is it's one of those games that you play to have fun. It has a story, but honestly, not much of the community cares about it. It's pretty underlying, and it's kind of one of those things where you acknowledge it here and there, but you keep moving. Sometimes there's cool set pieces like this one that you get for completing the new war, but other than that, the story isn't really important. The main reason you're doing it is to see numbers go up and is to have fun. It shouldn't be taken anywhere else. Destiny had a very split community when it came to that kind of thing, because first off, they kept sunsetting content. Second of all, some of the content was really cool story bits. I remember a while back when we still had our old raid crew, me and Flair anyway, we had a guy just completely, we had multiple people completely obsessed with the story and like the inner bits of it and whatever. And I was just there to play the fucking game because the game itself was very fun. And that's just kind of how it is. And the current state of Warframe is very good, no matter what people say, where it's like, oh, this isn't fun, like, ooh, power creep. But, yeah, of course there's going to be a slight amount of power creep. It's been 10 years since the game released. There are some frames that aren't good, and obligatory, they can still be used. Overall, though, the game's in a very secure place. It's very fun if you want to start it. It's very fun if you want to join up with people, have fun that way. Personally, I think starting the game now is probably the best time because the new or next content stuff isn't out yet. We're in a pretty solid state right now. And obviously, like, most players are willing to help other players. Like, I'm completely down for that shit. I love this game, and I can check here real quick before I really roll this up. My profile. I have 750 hours in this game. I have completed pretty much the entire game. Well, I haven't, but I've completed every tile on the standard star chart. And I've fucking obviously killed a ton of shit. But overall, yeah, that's a pretty decent explanation for how this game starts. So a little recap, mods, stuff like that, passive, very self-explanatory earlier. For starters, don't pay attention to the story as much, just kind of keep it on the back burner. That's what it is. It's a slow burn story. You get to it faster the further you get into it. It pretty much picks up when it needs to, and then it keeps that momentum for a little while before it kind of slows down now because, hey, we're waiting on the next content update. Leveling weapons and frames, decently easy. A lot of this game isn't overcomplicating it. If you start to overcomplicate it, you're not going to have fun. So, I don't think I really missed anything for starters. Again, just, it's a game you have fun in, and it's a game that you kind of pace yourself on. There's no big, like, rush to do anything. Like, for example, Trinity's been a frame that's been in the game for, like, the past 5 years, I think. She's been out for a while, and I only just now got around to her, and I'm loving her as she's currently my main. You can main anybody. I mean, I used to main weird characters. I used to be a Frost player when I first started playing the game, which was one of the best CC frames in the game at that time. He's now fallen off, per se, but again, any frame is viable. It's just depending on how far you want to take it. It's depending on how you want to build. But anyway, I have been talking pretty much constantly for the past hour and a half. I don't have much else to say. Yeah, thank you, Flair, for stopping in. It's cool to talk to you. At some point, I'll continue streaming. But, section of the video where I'm drawing a line, because this is going to be a kind of update thing. I'm working on the off retrospective. Still, I have the first I think like the first 15 minutes planned out real quick. I have to re-record some stuff. I have to replay the game from start to finish. I have to set up the new layout and everything so it looks pretty and it looks usable but I've started script writing on it. I've been rewatching some of the old VOD. Other than that, I do plan on getting back to Amori, Bankados, all of that. It's just, I have a new mic. I'm basically stress testing that anytime I stream on the computer. It does sound good. It does seem good. It is kind of iffy though. I wish I had a headset adapter for the one I'm wearing because I'm streaming on Xbox right now. Other than that, I might not be streaming too much within the next week. Back to school's going on. I work at Staples, so I literally work 6 days. I'm off Thursday and then I get back on it. So, yeah. Other than that, thank you all for watching. I am going to drink a ton of water because my voice is getting raspy and I can feel it. I am going to upload this. This is going to be a main channel upload because I didn't just put an hour and a half on the table to not upload it. So, have a good day, night, whatever. I am big chilling.